Do you ever get that feeling? That strange little hum in your chest when everything's loud, but something quieter starts pressing in, like the noise of the world is just a distraction, just static, to keep you from hearing what really matters. See, the funny thing about silence is it's never empty, it's packed, stuffed to the seams with all the things no one wants to say, especially the things that shake your bones. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's not silence at all. It's someone waiting. You've mistaken silence for absence. That's the trick, isn't it? That's how they get you. They teach you that if something isn't loud, if it isn't dramatic, if it doesn't crash through the ceiling in a blaze of thunder, then it must not be real. So you sit there in your chaos, waiting for fireworks, waiting for the sky to open up and spell out your name in lightning. And when it doesn't, you assume no one's listening. You think, maybe I'm alone, maybe no one's out there. But here's the joke. He's been speaking the whole time. Not with lightning, with whispers, with moments, with the space between the madness. You keep looking for him in miracles and miss him in the mess. You wait for the booming voice from above while ignoring the quiet pull inside your chest. You scream at the ceiling but never sit with the silence. Because silence? Oh, it's uncomfortable. It's dangerous. It strips away the noise you've built your identity around. And when it does, you're left with the one thing you've been avoiding this whole time. You. That broken, bruised, beautiful mess of you. And in that stillness, if you don't run, if you don't distract yourself, you start to hear things. Things you've been pretending weren't there. Like the fact that every disaster you thought was random had a message baked inside. That every betrayal, every breakdown, every time you were brought to your knees, it wasn't chaos. It was conversation. You just didn't like the language. You wanted comfort. He offered clarity. You wanted shortcuts. He gave you shadows. Because the only way you'd stop faking was when the mask melted. And melt it did. Oh, it cracked and crumbled right in your hands. And while you were cursing the pain, something deeper was forming underneath the rubble. But you missed it. Because you were so focused on the noise, the drama, the external. You thought if he really cared, he'd fix it all for you, wave a wand, change the world around you. But he wasn't after your surroundings. He was after your sight. He wanted you to see. And what better way to open your eyes than to blind you with loss, strip you of your illusions, and leave you with nothing but the truth, the kind of truth that doesn't clap, doesn't trend, just sits there, cold, undeniable, freeing. And even then, you doubted. You thought, if he was really here, I'd feel better by now. As if growth is supposed to be comfortable. As if truth is supposed to soothe. No, it shatters. It rips through the lie you've built your life around and dares you to rebuild without the masks. And in that mess, he's been waiting. Not tapping his foot, not rolling his eyes, just waiting. Like someone who knows time means nothing when eternity is the currency. Waiting while you fumble, fall, cry, scream. Watching as you try every wrong door just to make sure it's still locked. But he never left, not once. Just sat there, steady, silent. Speaking in ways you weren't trained to hear, through people you brushed off, through mistakes you cursed, through quiet nudges that made no sense until the pattern started showing up. And by the time you look back and connect the dots, you realize it was all him. Every echo, every whisper, every late night ache that said, This isn't it. That wasn't your gut. That wasn't your brain. That was him trying to get your attention in a world addicted to distraction. And it's funny, really. The very moments you labeled as abandonment were actually appointments. The very cracks you tried to hide were the spaces he used to speak through. The silence you ran from was the sanctuary he built for you to finally hear. Not because he couldn't speak louder, but because he wanted you to choose to listen. That's the punchline. That's the twist. You've been waiting on him while he's been waiting on you to shut up long enough to hear what's been screaming underneath your skin since the day you broke open and called it failure when it was actually the beginning of something he's been dying to tell you. You ever wonder why everything keeps getting delayed? Why the job doesn't land, the call doesn't come, the fix doesn't stick? People say it's bad timing, bad luck, maybe karma, doing cartwheels. But what if it's none of that? What if the delays weren't accidents or punishments, but perfectly staged pauses, like little traps laid out by someone who knows you're too stubborn to stop running unless something forces you to slow down? What if all the waiting rooms you cursed were actually construction zones, building something bigger behind the curtain while you fidgeted in the front row? Because let's be honest, you were never going to stop on your own. You were speeding toward a wall with a smile on your face and gasoline in your hands. You thought momentum was progress. You thought movement meant you were going somewhere. But all you were doing was escaping the one thing you needed to face: yourself. And so the delays started. Doors didn't open. Plans fell through. People vanished. And every time something slipped away, you didn't just lose control. You lost the illusion of control. That's where the lesson is. Not in the pain, not in the pause, but in the realization that you don't run the show. See, they don't tell you this part. They don't tell you that purpose isn't always delivered with a bow. Sometimes it comes wrapped in disappointment, in breakdowns disguised as detours. You think you're being punished, when really you're being protected. Protected from people you would have begged to stay. Protected from paths that would have devoured you. But protection doesn't feel like a hug when you're addicted to chaos. It feels like rejection. It feels like failure because you haven't learned to trust silence yet. But silence is where the real messages hide. It's the language of the divine, the holy pause, the heavy breath before the breakthrough. And while you're screaming, "Why isn't this working?" he's whispering, "You're not ready yet. Not ready for the weight, not ready for the power, not ready for the real." Because if he gave it to you too soon, it would have crushed you. You would have blown it, you would have wrapped it in insecurity and gifted it to people who had no business touching it. So instead, he waits and waits and waits, not because he's cruel, because he's precise. You think delay equals denial. That's the comedy of it. Like a kid banging on the oven door because the cake's not rising fast enough. You want speed, he wants substance. You want comfort, he wants capacity. So while you're throwing fits about timing, he's engineering your foundation, quietly, carefully. And that's the part no one claps for. The hidden stuff, the behind-the-scenes grind. But that's where everything real is born, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where your character gets carved out of chaos. And here's the kicker. Every delay you cursed actually saved you from a version of success that would have killed your soul. Yeah, you could have had it, the applause, the attention, the pretty little picture, but it would have cost you you. Because the person you were back then, They wanted validation, not truth. They wanted ease, not elevation, and he knew that. So the doors didn't open. The emails didn't come. And in that silence, something started shifting. You started getting quieter, hungrier, more honest. And that's when things started to move. Not outside, but inside. You thought he wasn't listening when things slowed down. But what if that was the only way to make you hear? What if the delay was the message? The pause wasn't the problem, it was the plan. Because what's the point of sending you into the next chapter if you're still dragging the broken pieces of the last one? What's the point of rushing you into the promise if the poison's still in your system? He had to detox you from everything you thought was necessary. Every identity you borrowed, every addiction you disguised as ambition, every relationship you labeled meant to be just because it felt familiar. So no, it wasn't punishment. It wasn't coincidence. It was the setup, the slow burn, the recalibration of someone who's not interested in giving you what you want. He's interested in who you become while you're waiting. And that version of you, the one that finally surrenders, finally listens, finally lets go of the script, that's the one he's been building in the silence all along. Funny how people keep begging for signs, like life is some kind of vending machine for divine answers. You've got them running around, lighting candles, staring at stars, scrolling through horoscopes like the truth's hiding in between the pixels. Give me a sign, they cry, as if they're not already drowning in them. They walk past wreckage over broken patterns through burning bridges and still say, I just wish I knew what to do. Oh, sweetheart, the answer's been screaming in your face. You're just not listening because you don't like how it sounds. Because here's the real punchline. You're sitting right in the middle of the answer, treating it like background noise. It's not hidden. It's not coded. It's just inconvenient. You want signs that affirm your fantasy, not the ones that dismantle your delusion. So when the truth shows up wrapped in discomfort, you call it confusion. When it shows up dressed as pain, you call it punishment. When it dares to contradict what you want, you pretend it doesn't exist. You're not waiting on God to speak. You're waiting on Him to say what you want to hear. Meanwhile, the signs are piled up around you like ignored warnings on a crashed highway. The people who left? Sign. The job that crumbled? Sign. The thing you're forcing that never flows? Sign. But no, you don't want those signs. You want pretty ones. Ones that pat your ego and kiss your comfort zone goodnight. You want the divine to co-sign your delusions, not challenge your cages. And the moment that challenge comes, you start labeling it not meant to be, when it's the most meant thing that's ever happened to you. You ask for guidance, but every time it whispers through your gut, you second guess it. Every time it yells through chaos, you mute it with distractions. That still small voice, you drowned it in noise, in Netflix, in validation, in likes and scrolls, and the desperate need to stay numb. Because the truth? It was never silent. You were just too loud. Too busy performing to hear the one line in the play that was actually real. But that's how you like it, right? Chaos keeps you comfortable. Clarity is terrifying when you've built your life around pretending. And don't even get me started on those gut feelings you keep dismissing. You know the ones. The tugs, the chills, the sick little flips in your stomach that tell you something's off. That's not anxiety. That's your soul tapping the glass saying, wake up. That's the alarm you keep snoozing, because awareness comes with responsibility, and if you actually admit you know, then you can't play dumb anymore. You can't keep blaming the universe for your own refusal to move. So it's easier to call it confusion. Easier to say, I don't know what to do, while standing knee-deep in the very thing you asked for. Clarity. Do you ever notice how the truth doesn't chase? It just sits, stares, waits. It doesn't need to yell because it knows it's right. It's the only thing in the room that doesn't flinch. And it will wait for you, years if it has to, while you chase everything else that almost feels right. It'll watch you touch the fire again and again, hoping this time it won't burn. It'll watch you run back to what broke you, hoping this time it'll love you. And still, it waits. Not out of cruelty, out of certainty, because it knows, sooner or later, the signs you've ignored will pile up too high to step over. So no, you're not lacking direction. You're rejecting correction. You're not lost. You're just avoiding the path that requires you to tear down the version of yourself you built to survive. And that version, oh, it's clever. It knows how to play the game. It knows how to look fine while falling apart. But it also knows the truth is a threat, because once you acknowledge it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to fake. You can't make yourself small again. And that's the cost you're afraid of, losing the identity built on noise once you finally hear the whisper underneath. But that whisper has been talking the whole time. Through dreams, through disappointments, through people who came and left just to show you something, through breakdowns that stripped the lie bare, through the ache in your chest every time you pretended you were okay. You keep begging for a sign, but what you really need is a mirror, because the truth isn't coming, it's already here, waiting for you to finally stop pretending you don't recognize its face. You think he's hiding from you? That he's playing some cosmic game of hide-and-seek, whispering riddles while you run around like a lost child in a burning maze? No. No, that's not what's happening. He's not hiding. You are. You've got your hands over your own eyes, and you're blaming the dark for being dark. He's been speaking, loudly, through every closed door you ignored, every red flag you romanticized, every voice inside you that said, don't go there. Well, you smiled and skipped toward the fire anyway. You didn't want answers. You wanted comfort. And the second truth showed up looking like disruption. You called it the enemy. And the second truth showed up looking like disruption. You called it the enemy. It's easier that way, right? To make him the villain when the plan falls apart. To scream into the void and say he abandoned you, when in reality he was right there, begging you to stop building altars to your own destruction. But no, you wanted to be the hero in your own story. You wanted to write the script, direct the scenes, cast the characters. And when the play turned to tragedy, suddenly it's his fault. You say he's silent, but the truth is you muted him because he wouldn't follow your script. You wanted him to play along with your fantasy, not rip the mask off the lie. He doesn't hide in temples or clouds or ancient scrolls. He hides in plain sight, in gut feelings, in tears that fall for no reason, in moments of stillness you rush to fill with noise, in the peace that unsettles you because it's unfamiliar. He shows up in chaos, dressed as clarity, and you look the other way because clarity means responsibility. It means you can't keep blaming your past. It means you can't keep holding on to the excuse that you didn't know better. And you did. You just didn't want better badly enough to let go of what was killing you. Because healing, oh, healing costs. It cost your victim card, it cost your comfort, it cost the lies you wrapped yourself in just to survive. And he knew that. That's why he didn't force his way in. That's why he waited, not because he was distant, but because he knew you'd confuse the medicine for poison you weren't ready to see. So he waited, he watched, he whispered, and you kept pretending not to hear. You didn't lose the map. You just ignored the landmarks. The heartbreak, the disappointment, the ache in your bones when you smiled and said, "I'm fine, all signs, all him." But you were too busy building altars to approval, to applause, to whatever numbed the ache fastest. You looked for him in big moments, in fireworks and miracles, and missed him in the quiet undoing of your illusions. You thought he lived in the extraordinary, but he's been breathing through the ordinary this whole time, through silence, through stillness, through everything you avoid like it's death, when really it's where life actually begins. You ever notice how fast you move when things start to feel too real? How quick you are to distract, to laugh too loud, to scroll too deep? You think you're running from the world, but it's him you're dodging. Because if you stopped long enough, you'd have to admit you've always known. You've always heard him. You've just been afraid of what he might ask you to leave behind. And he will. Oh, he will. Not because he's cruel. Because he refuses to let you keep drinking poison and calling it holy. You said you wanted truth, but you weren't ready for the kind that burns, the kind that strips, the kind that dismantles everything fake you built to feel safe. That's why he waited. Not because he gave up on you, but because he knew the scaffolding of your lies had to collapse before you'd look up. He knew as long as you could make it work, you'd never surrender. You'd keep performing, keep pretending, keep piecing together broken things and calling it purpose. So he stepped back, not out of indifference, out of strategy. You say he's been silent for years. I say he's been waiting for you to shut up, to stop running, to stop hiding behind logic and ambition and pain and pride, to finally get honest, because that's where he is. Not behind the next goal, not in the next person, not buried in another plan you crafted to avoid dealing with yourself. He's here, now, in this breath, in this moment, in the raw, cracked open space you've been terrified to enter. He never left. You just built so many walls around your own heart. You mistook your own prison for his absence. Pain, pain, the uninvited guest that never knocks, just kicks the door down and makes itself at home. You curse it, cry because of it, try to numb it, dodge it, bury it under fake smiles and louder laughs. But what if I told you that pain is the only honest voice in the whole damn room? It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't sugarcoat or tiptoe. Pain walks in with muddy boots, wrecks the table, and dares you to clean it up, all while whispering something no one else has the guts to say. That ache in your chest, that hollowness in your gut, it's not random. It's not punishment. It's the megaphone, and someone upstairs is screaming through it that you've been taught to shut it out, to label it as weakness, to numb it with success, with pills, with busyness, with fake connections, and one more "I'm fine." The world taught you to silence the messenger and keep dancing through the fire like it doesn't hurt. What a joke. A tragic little comedy where everyone plays pretend and the truth sits quietly in the corner, bleeding. And you keep asking for clarity, for answers, for a message from above, all while ignoring the one thing that's been speaking the loudest. You want to hear from God? listen to your pain. That knot in your stomach every time you walk into that room, that weight in your chest when you try to sleep, that moment when everyone's laughing and you feel completely alone. That's not a glitch. That's a signal. That's the divine wrapping itself in discomfort just to get your damn attention. And it works, doesn't it? Because nothing sobers you up faster than real pain. Not that fake, dramatic stuff, no. I'm talking about the kind that hits you when the mask cracks, when you're alone with your thoughts, when the applause fades and you're left staring into the mirror, wondering what the hell happened to you. And you think he's trying to hurt you? That he gets some kick out of your tears? No. The pain isn't to punish you. It's to pull you back, to wake you up, to stop you mid-performance and say, hey, this isn't who you are. But you keep interpreting it like it's the enemy. You fight it, resist it, sedate it, when you should be listening, sitting with it, asking what it's trying to tell you. But that's the problem with truth. It doesn't come gift-wrapped. It comes in scars, in heartbreak, in betrayal. In the moment you realize the thing you begged for wasn't a blessing. It was a distraction, dressed in your favorite flavor of poison. And you don't want to admit that, do you? Because then you'd have to admit you stayed too long. You kept saying yes when everything inside you was screaming no. You made peace with chaos because it felt familiar. And now, the pain's knocking, asking you to remember what you buried. But no, you'd rather patch it up and paint over it. That's what they all do. Quick fix, surface smile. Tell the world it's all good while rotting from the inside out. Meanwhile, pain keeps knocking. Louder this time. It wants in, not to ruin you, but to reveal you. Because once you stop fighting it, something strange happens. You start hearing what it's been trying to say all along. You start remembering who you were before you edited yourself into pieces for love, for validation, for survival. Pain becomes the flashlight in the basement of your soul, showing you the mess you made while sleepwalking through your own life. And yeah, it hurts. Oh, it burns. That's transformation. That's the fire that doesn't destroy. It purifies. It strips away the illusions, the lies, the parts of you that were never real to begin with. But you gotta let it in. You gotta stop running from it like it's a monster. Because the real monster, it's the silence that follows when you keep ignoring it. That quiet numbness that settles in and pretends to be peace, but is actually just the absence of feeling. That's the death you should fear, not pain. Pain means there's still something alive in you. Something that wants more. Something that knows this can't be it. And maybe that something is the voice of God you've been asking to hear, coming through in the one way that always gets your attention. You thought he'd speak through miracles, through fireworks, through some preacher shouting from a stage. But maybe, just maybe, he's been screaming through your suffering. Maybe he's been using the ache as an invitation, the breakdown as a doorway, the chaos as a compass pointing you back to where you got lost. Because sometimes he doesn't calm the storm. He uses it to reveal the parts of you that need to drown. And you, well, you've been flailing in shallow water, calling it deep, thinking you're dying, when really, you're being reborn. Everyone keeps telling you to stay strong, don't cry, smile through the mess, fake it till you make it. They say weakness is a liability, like it's some contagious disease that will ruin your reputation. Oh, how adorable. Everyone's playing dress-up in emotional hazmat suits, avoiding anything that looks remotely human. But here's the punchline. Seeking help is the most rebellious thing you can do in a world obsessed with pretend. You think strength is doing everything on your own? That's what they want you to think? That's the show, the script, the big lie. Strength, real strength, is saying, I can't do this alone, in a world that rewards silence and punishes honesty. You see them, don't you? The ones clenching their jaws so hard they forget how to speak. The ones swallowing their screams, stuffing them down with another cup of coffee and a half-hearted laugh. They walk around like ticking time bombs with glitter on top. And when they finally snap, oh, suddenly everyone's surprised. Yeah, that's the point. They were performing, lying slowly in costume. And the second they asked for help, the world labeled them weak. That's the trick. Keep people quiet, and you keep them controlled. Keep them pretending, and you keep them predictable. But when someone finally cracks that mask and says no more, that's when the real power shows up. You've been taught to survive, not to heal. Taught to endure, not to express. And what happens when you finally try to reach out? They hit you with cliches. Stay positive. Others have it worse. Don't be dramatic. And just like that, you crawl right back into silence. You shrink, you lie, you go numb. Because the risk of vulnerability feels like a gamble with no payout. But what if I told you the whole system was rigged? What if asking for help was never weakness, but rebellion, a refusal to die quietly, a decision to live loudly? They say the strong don't need anyone, but let's tell the truth. How many strong people have you seen break behind closed doors? How many warriors turned to ash when no one was watching? Because the armor doesn't heal you, it hides you. And it's heavy, isn't it? That smile you wear every day, that constant need to hold it all together. It's suffocating. But they don't see that. They just applaud the mask. They cheer the performance. And you wonder why you're exhausted all the time, wondering if maybe you're the problem. But you're not. You're human, and humans aren't meant to be machines. You were never supposed to handle all this alone. You weren't designed to carry grief in silence, to battle anxiety with fake productivity, to survive trauma with a to-do list and a motivational quote. You need connection. You need space to unravel without judgment. You need a hand to reach back when you reach out. And there's nothing shameful about that. But the system won't tell you that. The system profits off your silence. It thrives on your isolation. It loves when you pretend you're okay while slowly fading away. So when you finally say, I need help, you're not falling apart. You're breaking the cycle. You're standing in defiance of everything that told you to stay small and silent. You're choosing to live differently, and that terrifies people, because your courage exposes their cowardice. Your honesty shatters their illusion, so they'll call you weak, dramatic, needy. But secretly, they wish they had your guts. They wish they could scream too. They wish they could stop pretending, but they're too invested in the mask. You're not. You want freedom? Start by telling the truth. Say you're tired. Say you're scared. Say you don't have it all figured out. And watch how uncomfortable it makes the room. That discomfort, that's power. That's the moment you stop performing and start transforming. And yeah, not everyone will clap for that version of you. Some will walk away. Let them. Because the ones who stay, they're the ones who see. 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 And maybe, just maybe, asking for help isn't about being saved. Maybe it's about letting someone witness your storm without trying to fix the weather. Maybe it's about realizing you were never meant to carry all this weight just to prove a point. Maybe the point was never to prove anything at all. Maybe the point was to finally be human again. Messy, loud, honest, healing. And if that terrifies them, good, let it. Because your voice, your need, your rawness, it's not a burden, it's a revolution. Oh, how they love control. Not the kind with chains and whips, no, that's too obvious. The kind that looks like love, sounds like advice and feels like approval. Control wrapped in compliments, control baked into expectations. You're not told who to be, they just reward the version of you that's easiest to manage. You think you're making choices, but look a little closer. You're dancing to music someone else composed. You think you're free, but they've been pulling strings so gently you forgot you ever had hands. They tell you what to wear, but call it fashion. Tell you how to act, but call it manners. Tell you who to love, but call it tradition. All the while whispering, just be yourself. What a joke. You're handed a mask at birth and told it's your face, and every time you try to take it off, someone gasps. So you keep it on, you make it smile, you make it strong. And somewhere along the line, you start to forget what your real face even looked like. The worst part? You helped them. You gave them the paint, the brush, the canvas. You let their approval decide your worth. Their applause became your oxygen. You handed them the scissors and said, sure, cut off what doesn't fit. And they did, piece by piece, dream by dream, until what's left is not quite you, but not quite them either. Just this glitchy little puppet who nods on command and smiles through the burn. Control doesn't always come with a leash. Sometimes it's a hug that lingers too long. Sometimes it's a voice in your head that sounds suspiciously like your mother's. Sometimes it's a job that pays just enough to keep you quiet. Sometimes it's love, poisoned with conditions. I'll love you if, I'll support you when, I'll see you once you become someone else. And you bite your tongue, fold yourself smaller, shrink to fit the mold, because being accepted feels safer than being real. Doesn't it? But here's the trick. They never really accept you. They accept the role you play. The one who's agreeable, manageable, predictable. They love the act, not the actor. And if you ever dare to drop the act, they call you difficult, crazy, ungrateful, disloyal. Because your rebellion reveals their dependency. You stepping out of line reminds them, so they punish you with silence, with distance, with judgment dressed as concern. Are you okay? They ask, but what they mean is, why aren't you playing along? And control hides in the little things. The look when you speak too loudly, the sigh when you dream too big, the laugh when you try something new. It's death by 1,000 validations withheld. They won't chain you, they'll just disappear every time you show them your truth. So you stop showing it. You conform, you camouflage, you compromise, and one day you wake up surrounded by people who don't even know you, and worse, you let them. You want to be free? You gotta get used to disappointing people. Not in a cruel way, in a real way. In a this is who I am way. You have to unlearn the idea that your worth is tied to their comfort. You have to break the mirror they built and find your own reflection. You have to risk being misunderstood, misjudged, misquoted, because only then will you know you're no longer being controlled. And don't think you're exempt just because you're rebellious on the surface. Control comes for everyone. It just changes its face depending on what you fear most. If you fear being alone, it shows up as companionship. If you fear failure, it shows up as pressure to succeed. If you fear rejection, it shows up as applause you can't live without. It's always one step ahead, dressing itself in what you crave. That's how it wins. Not by force, by seduction, by convenience, by making you think the cage is a throne. But every now and then, someone snaps. Someone stops laughing at the wrong jokes, stops nodding in agreement, stops shrinking for the sake of peace. And when they do, oh, how the room turns cold. Because nothing threatens a controlled system like someone who refuses to play pretend. That person becomes a mirror no one wants to look into, a glitch in the program, a spark in the powder room. And once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the invisible strings, the subtle manipulations, the way people talk at you instead of to you, the way love feels like leverage, the way silence is used like a weapon. You start pulling on those strings one by one until you feel your fingers again, until your voice stops shaking, until the mask slips off and your face, your real face, finally breathe. And they won't know what to do with you then, because control only works on those still begging to belong. They always want to fix you, don't they? Like you're some broken clock ticking out of sync with the polite rhythm of the world. They see your scars and pull out toolkits, self-help mantras, diagnosis charts, spiritual duct tape, whatever makes them feel useful. Because God forbid they sit still with your pain. God forbid they let you be. You flinch in the daylight and suddenly they think you need rewiring. You speak your truth and they call it negativity. But maybe, just maybe, you're not broken. Maybe you're just finally done pretending everything's fine. They say things like, you're not yourself, as if they ever really knew you. As if the version of you they liked wasn't just a well-trained survival strategy. You were never the smiling puppet they applauded. You were just good at hiding, at performing, at keeping the peace while your inside screamed. And now that you're showing up raw, now that your edges don't round off for their comfort, now you're a problem. Now you're difficult because you're not easy to digest anymore. Because you stopped sanding yourself down to fit into their idea of functional. Let's get one thing straight. You don't need to be fixed. You were never designed to be digestible. You were born messy, loud, wild. You were born with fire in your lungs and storms behind your eyes. But the world isn't built for people like that. It's built for quiet obedience, for fitting in, for smiling when you want to scream. So they teach you to mute yourself, reward you for shrinking, clap when you bleed in silence and call it strength. And when you finally crack, they act surprised. You were doing so well. No, you were just dying politely. Everyone's obsessed with healing now, as if healing is a checkbox, a product, a performance. Meditate, journal, take a bubble bath, swallow a quote, post a reel, drink your green smoothie, and suddenly all your trauma will turn to glitter. But healing isn't linear, it's not cute, it's not photogenic. It's not even always visible. Sometimes it looks like rage. Sometimes it looks like apathy. Sometimes it looks like cutting people off mid-sentence because you finally realized you don't owe them your time. And none of that means you're broken. It means you're responding to pain in the only language you've got left. They say be better, but better by whose standards? The ones who benefit from your silence? The ones who only love you when you're easy to love? If healing means returning to who you were before the pain, then what was the point? The pain changed you. It carved you. It revealed you. You don't need to be patched up and pushed back into the game. You don't need to be repackaged into something easier to hold. Maybe what you need is space to breathe, space to rage, space to not be okay without someone hovering over you with a checklist and a nervous smile. They'll try to guilt you into gratitude, tell you how lucky you are, how others have it worse, as if comparing suffering is some Olympic sport, as if you're not allowed to bleed unless you bleed the most. It's not about who's hurting more. It's about who's allowed to say it out loud. And if you do, if you speak up, they call it weakness. But maybe weakness is just honesty that makes people uncomfortable. Maybe the strongest thing you can do is scream into the void and not care who hears. You're not a project. You're not a puzzle to be solved or a test to be graded. You're a person, a story, a collection of cracked mirrors still catching light. Stop letting them gaslight you into compliance. Stop apologizing for needing space, for setting boundaries, for feeling too much. Feeling isn't a flaw. It's the one thing that proves you're still alive. And isn't that what they're really afraid of? That you're still alive, that you haven't given up, that you're still fighting, even if all you're doing is breathing through another day. You think you need fixing because they told you broken people don't get love, but what they really meant was complicated people make them uncomfortable. You're not complicated. You're layered, you're deep, you're real, and that threatens everything built on superficial smiles and hollow encouragements. So they try to tone you down, smooth you out, package you nicely, but realness doesn't come with a bow. It comes with fire, it comes with fury, it comes with truth so sharp it slices through every performance around it. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be heard, witnessed, accepted without edits. You need someone to say, I see you, without following it up with, here's how to be better. You're not a machine malfunctioning. You're a human reacting. And maybe the point isn't to return to who you were. Maybe the point is to evolve into who you were never allowed to be. The version of you that was too loud, too wild, too soft, too much. The version of you that stopped asking for permission to feel.